Who's cooler than bakers? So recently I was down in Manhattan and somebody told me I should go to Elbow Bakery and try the laminated challah bun. I did, it was amazing. I came back, I messed around and wrote a recipe that sort of honors that. And today we're gonna make it and we'll also talk to Zoe, the head baker. Let's get to the video. I don't know if there's much to say here. Basically, this is just a challah dough. I didn't really change anything from our classic challah that's on the website. If you've made that before, you're gonna recognize elements of this dough process. The one small change that I've made is that I do hydrate the yeast a little bit in my warm water before I sort of proceed to the rest of the recipe. So, I've got some lukewarm water, I've got my dry yeast, and then I'm adding the honey in too, just to get it nice and hydrated and distributed. And I'm just gonna whisk that. In our classic challah, that dough is mixed for quite a while. And in that mixing process, the yeast has time to sort of dissolve well. Now, this dough, sort of conversely, is not mixed that much. And the reason that I don't mix it that much is that I find that a softer, less developed dough, a dough essentially with less strength, will extend more easily during the lamination process. So I'm purposefully sort of underdeveloping the dough because I know that during the lamination process, I'm gonna gain a lot of strength. That can hang out for a second. I think in the recipe I say 10 minutes or so while I gather the other stuff here. I've got some eggs here. They're soaking in warm water. I want to warm them up before they go into the dough. I don't want to put cold eggs in there. I want warm eggs so that they support fermentation. And this is one whole egg. And then I also have just the yolk of the second egg. We're going to save that white and we'll use that to egg wash our dough before it goes into the oven. Also going into the bowl, I have some vegetable oil and I've got some salt. And I have 300 grams of all-purpose flour. Okay, everything into the bowl, and then I'm just gonna give it a quick stir to combine. And I'm just gonna use my flexible scraper and knead this dough. Making sure that I have all my dry bits incorporated. If you feel like you want to get it out on the counter and knead it for a second, you can do that. Just to sort of smooth it out. You don't have to look for a smooth dough here. I'm just looking for a dough that is perfectly homogeneous and just beginning to sort of get snappy, just a little bit of a snap to it. And then I've got a handy 2-quart container. It's one of my favorite tools. Little spritz. Put that in there. Put it in a nice warm spot to rise for an hour to an hour and a half. We'll come back and we'll start our lamination. Zoe, I'm so excited. Thank you so much. First, so I wrote this laminated challah based on David Tamarkin, my colleague. He came and he was like, Martin, this is one of the best things I've had in a long time. Look at this product and see if you can get some inspiration from it. And of course I did. And then I got to come down and actually meet you last week and have it. And it was better than I even expected. I wanted to know just a little bit about your development process for it, A, and then B, I also was wondering did anybody give you a hard time because you're, laminating challah with butter? Did anybody say nah, don't add butter to challah and some of those things?
It was kind of an initial conundrum that I struggled with even before I started developing the recipe, but I had the idea to do it. And I thought that it could potentially be one of our core kind of laminated doughs at Elbow. And initially, I actually had the thought to laminate it with vegan butter.
Oh, yeah.
As a way to keep it dairy-free. But ultimately, I moved away from that. It was going to make it so much more difficult to execute and also more expensive. One of my favorite things to eat is a slice of warm challah, melted with butter and honey. So I set out to kind of create that flavor and sensation, that experience, like in one pastry. And then my other touchstone was a honey bun, which is something that I would kind of grew up eating from a gas station,
Right,
like
of
a
course.
vending machine. It was like a favorite snack growing up. And I used a croissant dough as my like jumping off point,
Right.
just in terms of hydration, and then make adjustments so that it matched up with the kind of challah paste, eggs forward, sweet from honey, and add a little bit of oil
Yep.
as well for soft stuff.
Yeah.
We're back after about 90 minutes. It could have been 2 hours, it could have been 2.5 hours. This dough is very forgiving, okay? So you can let it go until it's doubled. In our case, it took about 90 minutes, and it looks beautiful. It's marshmallowy, it's exactly where I want it to be. It's ready for the next step in this process. So I'm gonna dump it onto a lightly floured surface. Then I'm gonna roll it out just a little bit, and then I'm gonna chill it. What I want is for the consistency of the dough to match the eventual consistency of the butter that I'm gonna laminate in. And so in order to achieve that, I'm gonna chill it down a little bit. And it's nice after the sort of chilling phase to have it closer to the shape that you're gonna need for when the butter goes in. So what I'm doing is I'm taking that round piece of dough and I'm making it into a rectangle, okay? About 8 by 10. You can do that by sort of stretching, by pulling on it, and by using your rolling pin. And then, you know, don't guess, y'all, your best friend in almost any laminated project is a good, comfortable tape measure. So I'm getting this into an 8 by 10. So boom, 8 and 11. It's a little bit long, that's okay. Just give it a little bit of a scrunch down, and that's just fine. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it onto a parchment lined sheet tray with a little bit of flour, and I'm going to freeze it. Get a cover on it, make sure you're covering it right, don't let it dry out. We'll be right back and I'm going to show you how to do the butter for the lamination.
I have this method for home where it's a very, very, very thin butter sheet, just because I think that one of the problems that we run into at home a lot is just butter breakage. People don't necessarily know how to sort of look for the right consistency of butter, or they're not using a high quality like butter sheet like we'd be using in a bakery, right?
Yeah, totally. And then you're able, since your dough is softer too, you're probably able to use butter that is a little bit warmer.
Exactly.
You might need to.
Exactly.
In a bakery.
Okay, so let's prepare the butter block. I want to show you a trick where I'm going to cut some slices of butter and I'm going to put them into this sort of parchment package that we're going to make, and then we're going to roll it very, very thinly. So the way that I like to start this is by making this sort of butter package itself. And what I want is something that has a 7 by 10 dimension. It's going to be 7 wide by 10 high. And I make it out of real good quality parchment because it can sort of take some of the pressure that I'm going to put on it when I roll it out. And then I just fold the ends up about 1 inch. What I want is a very thin layer of butter. And the reason for that is when we go to laminate, one of the most common problems that people encounter is that while they're rolling, they break the butter. The butter essentially sort of fractures. And one of the ways that we can prevent that is by working with a very thin layer of butter, because what happens is that it becomes pliable much more quickly. And what I have found at home with a lot of testing and a lot of work is this method where I basically work with a very, very thin layer of butter. So I need about 170 grams. So I'm just going to cut off this block of butter that I have. If you have sticks, do it exactly the same way. You know, just cut thin pieces and weigh them. And now I can get it onto my sort of parchment package. And what I do is I just sort of layer them in. I just layer these pieces in that I cut. If you use room temperature butter, it's easier. If the butter is like super cold or right out of the fridge, this process will be a little bit more challenging. So once I have them on there, I go ahead and close my package up. Now maybe you're starting to get the idea. I've got this butter and it's held inside my parchment package. And now I can go with my rolling pin and just sort of spread it out super evenly into this little parchment package. If the ends come up or something, it's okay, go back, press them. If it's easier for you to sort of start with your hands, that's okay too. Find whatever way works for you. Take the time to make sure that this is really nice and even, and it will support a better quality lamination for you. And that goes for croissants or anything else. So I think that's good. If I hold it up to the light, I can see if I have any thin spots, and I don't. It looks beautiful. It's super, super thin. It's probably like 1/8 of an inch or something like that. It's exactly what I want. So I'll get this in the freezer. As soon as it's chilled, we'll come back and I'll show you what the next step is.
I love the idea that you're approaching it from the standpoint of like a laminated brioche or a laminated, any egg enriched dough, because that's exactly kind of where I started. And so I took a challah that we have on the website and then just started messing with the lamination process, and it seems to be working great.
Wow, that's stunning.
Super easy. And I mean, for home bakers, it's almost like to have a softer dough is a little bit better for them, because they're pinning by hand. I just do 2 singles and that's it.
You got that beautiful kind of open.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
No, I hadn't thought about how it would adapt really well to, baking at home, because how that softness of the base dough is actually, makes the process a little bit more approachable.
Much more approachable. And it's so soft that, you can do your 2 singles right back to back, no big deal.
Okay, so my butter is all chilled down. You can see how it becomes really firm. Too firm to work with, honestly. Like right now, we don't necessarily want to try and roll that dough. And that's, I think, where a lot of people have been sort of steered poorly in the past, is that they've been directed to use butter, which is too cold for lamination. We want to make sure that the butter is pliable. I also have my little dough piece here. It's chilled down and it's firmed up. Feels real good. What I want to do with this now is roll it out a little bit to get it to a better size to accept this whole piece of butter, okay? So right now I'm going to roll it to about 14 by 10. And you can see the benefit of having given some attention to detail in terms of starting with a rectangle. From the very beginning, I've been mindful of having that rectangular form. It's going to support easier lamination because I'm not sort of trying to deal with those rounded corners all the time. So I'm going to 14 by 10, and that is so that the dough is exactly twice as big as the butter. You're going to see what I mean by that in just a second. Now, one of the challenges that I dealt with early on in developing this method was that getting a thin layer of butter out of the package was challenging. I would be sort of unwrapping it and the butter's pulling away and all these problems. So I found that by really chilling it down, really freezing it, the parchment comes off much more easily. So I open the package up and I invert it onto my dough piece. And I'm just peeking underneath to make sure, is it well aligned? Is everybody centered mostly? Yes, okay. I'll give it just a little press. And then starting on one corner and really pulling at a sharp angle, I just sort of peel it back, and then you can put a hand on and you can hold it in place as you pull, and you'll make sure that the butter is just perfectly on there. So now we're at the point where in a lot of recipes, they would immediately have you just close the butter block and just start rolling. And that's where a lot of people run into problems. At that exact juncture, they break the butter. The butter is too cold to be pliable yet. And so what I advocate for is that you let this hang out for a minute until the butter and the dough are roughly the same consistency. When I press on the dough, I can feel my fingers sort of leave an impression. When I push on the butter right now, it doesn't accept my finger. It doesn't leave an impression. So I'm going to wait until it softens some. What I'm going to do is just set it aside, come back in 10 minutes or so, and we'll make sure that it's nice and pliable before we proceed. Butter is happy now. Super pliable, soft, definitely soft. What I did was I put it on a tray and I put it kind of close to the oven because I've got the oven preheated already. Now, what I want to do is just close this up. And what I'm going to do is just fold it from left to right or right to left, doesn't even matter. Whatever your thing is. So I'm just closing up the butter block inside the dough. So now let's get into the rolling part. Now that the butter is soft, it's going to allow me to roll it really thinly without it breaking. And that is what we want with lamination, right? Because the whole thing is that if the butter breaks during lamination, then you have these spots where dough is meeting dough. And the whole point of all of this effort is to have this structure inside the dough, which is dough, butter, dough, butter, dough, butter. Now what I'm going to do is roll this out and do the first fold. So what I like to do is sort of go in and do this thing like, maybe I call it a washboard. Maybe I'm not the only one to call it like a washboard, but basically I'm kind of like washboarding this dough. And what that's going to do is a few things. It's going to begin to distribute the butter and the dough. It's also going to help the dough maintain this sort of like north-south aspect as I roll it. It's not going to get sort of wonky on me. So I go in, I give it a little bit of a washboard, and then I just see how easily it will extend. And it's extending super easily because this is a nice soft dough. First one, I'm going to 8 by 18, and then I go in and do my first fold. This is just a simple letter fold, or what sometimes we'll call like a single. I have a little bit of flour on the top side of my dough here. I don't want to incorporate that as I fold. I want this to be a nice clean surface where the doughs will stick to one another very easily as they proof. And so I like to do a little bit of cleanup. I even will often go in with a little bit of a squirt bottle, like in a sort of misting setting, and just give it a little bit of a spritz just to make sure that when I perform these folds that they adhere well. So I did my single, making sure that my surface is clean, making sure that my dough is floating. After that first one, I think I need to be 6 by 8. Grab a little flour, make sure that, like I said, that I'm floating on this surface. And then again, I go in and just give it a little bit of pressure. And I'm going to get it out to 18. Lamination looks real good. Double check my length and my width. I'm right at 8 by 18. Clean my block up a little bit. Give it a little spritz. Should be right around 6 wide and maybe 7.5 long, maybe 8, somewhere in there, 8, and yeah, 6 wide. Okay, this dough feels soft and it feels like it's taking these folds well, so I'm going to get a little bit of flour and I'm going to do one last sort of roll, and I'm just going to get it out to about 6.5. So just a little bit of gentle encouragement to get a little bit wider. We're getting there. But that wasn't that bad, right? Go throw this in the fridge. Make sure you cover it.
I love that you went in the loaf direction. We were doing that too. You know, one of my visions with this dough is I knew I wanted to braid it in some way.
Yeah.
To kind of, you know, fall back to the challah origin. And so I was braiding loaves and kind of baking like as a free-form loaf, as you would like a braided challah loaf. Right. But the loaf pan is really smart to kind of contain shape.
I'll let this dough chill for just a minute and get my pan prepared. And let's go ahead and get these strips cut, these strands cut. You know, when I first started making this, I thought it would be pretty to have a braided challah. And so that's what I tried initially, just doing it on a sheet tray as I would a sort of standard challah. But it sort of went sideways. It didn't go up as much. It was sort of flat in profile. And I felt like it just didn't really represent challah to me. And so I thought, let's use a loaf pan. And that ended up being my form of choice. The dimensions at this point should be about 10 by 6, 6.5. And what I'm going to do is, because I have these folds on the side, I'm going to clean those up. I'm going to trim them so that on the sides I have that exposed lamination layer. It does make it a little bit prettier because it exposes that lamination so that when it proofs, we have a little bit more like visible layers. So now what you need to do is you need to cut 6 1-inch strips. You can use your, measuring tape to do that, or you can exactly split the dough in half and then just go in and make your 1/3 marks. So I need 6 strands at 1 inch in width. And if they're not exactly perfect, if you find the dough moving on you some, all of that, don't worry about it. It's going to be okay. This dough is going to rise so much that some of those small differences will sort of proof out as they go. Okay, almost there. A little bit of water on top just to help these strands stick to themselves, because what I'm going to do is invert them and sort of double the thickness of each piece. And the reason for that is that I want them to sort of look like strands. I want them to be sort of beefier, like a strand would be, like an actual strand. So I'm turning them and stacking them. Give them a little bit of a press to adhere. And then I'll set them adjacent to one another, just like I would if I were braiding challah. Give the strands a little brush, make sure that I don't have any excess flour. And then you can braid however you like. I tend to like to braid from the middle to the end, and then I'll invert it and braid the rest of the way. You can see lots of great videos on me making challah, and then when you get to the end, just sort of press to adhere. Like I said, if it's not perfect, don't fret too much. A lot of this is going to come out in the wash, as it were, as it proofs. Boy, I can see the layers though. I'll get it into my Pullman, a little short Pullman here. Get a cover on it, put it in a nice warm spot to rise for a couple hours at least. I find sometimes it takes even up to 3 hours depending on how your house is. If it's a little on the cool side, you may find yourself waiting 3 hours or so. What I'm looking for is that the level of rise is at least up to, say, 1 inch below the top edge of this 9x4 Pullman. You want to at least get it up there. If it's even a little bit higher than that, that's fine. It's going to be delicious. So give it a nice full proof in a protected spot, and then we'll come back, we'll egg wash it before it goes into the oven. All right, at long last, ready to get this thing into the oven. I have my oven preheated to 375, and I'm gonna go ahead and I have that reserved egg white. Remember earlier into the batch, we put 1 whole egg plus 1 yolk. We reserved the white, and now we're gonna use that to brush the loaf. As I brush, I'm kind of trying, as I would with a croissant, to avoid the sort of lamination where it's exposed, and I'm just trying to hit these spots where the exterior pieces are showing. If I go ahead and egg wash the lamination, it will almost seal those layers and we won't see that visible sort of layered effect as well. So I'm avoiding that as best as I can. Doesn't have to be perfect. So this looks good. It's ready to go in. We'll get it in there 30 to 35 minutes until it's beautifully brown and colored deep into the sort of crevices of this loaf. We want nice, full color. Let's load it. The loaf looks gorgeous. It's exactly what I want in terms of like burnished sort of chestnut color. Really, really nice. I'm gonna let it cool for 5 minutes, and while it cools, I'm gonna go ahead and get my honey warmed up and get it ready for this final garnish.
It's a lot of work for 1 loaf. Yeah, but that's how it goes at home, man. I mean,
Yeah, and hey, the payoff I feel is huge, because you're putting in the effort, but then it's for something that's super unique.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
it's something that you can't find at too many bakeries.
Yeah.
Unless you come to Elbow.
Yeah, exactly. I appreciate you taking the time. It's been such a pleasure to work on this, and so I owe you a debt of gratitude just for the inspiration as well. So keep it up, Zoe. Thanks for being an inspiration for us. We appreciate it, and everybody should come check out Elbow. But come when it's not busy, right?
Come anytime.
Go anytime. Okay.
Come anytime.
Okay. Zoe, thanks for your time, and I hope I see you soon. Okay? Yeah.
Bye.
You take care.
Who's cooler than bakers? I don't know. I don't know anybody cooler than bakers. Smells really good in here. Smells like, I don't know, smells like croissants or something. All that butter and eggs and other delicious things. Okay, so gently, gently out of the pan. I'm gonna add a little bit of honey. You don't have to do this, but this is sort of a nod to the delicious laminated challah bun that I had down at Elbow Bakery in Manhattan. Zoe's beautiful, beautiful roll. The instructions just say a tablespoon. If you find yourself wanting a little bit more than that, that's okay too. I think after having gone down there, I'm like, maybe I need to up that amount a little bit. So I'm just gonna pour it, spread it around a little bit, let it run down some. And then I've got a little bit of flaky salt, just a little bit for the top. When I gave this to my kids to try, they were like, oh, wow, Daddy, wow. And also the salt, you know, everybody loving that. Man. Delicious. Really, really delicious. Do some lamination, y'all. Try it. If you've been afraid, just watch the video, follow along with the steps, use the methods that I've prescribed. I think they're gonna help you. This is our beautiful laminated challah loaf inspired by Zoe down at Elbow Bakery in Manhattan. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Zoe. We'll see y'all next time.